Hey, 60, how's everybody out there? I've been away for a while, right? Mostly because I had gone to a funeral and down south, and there was lots of food there. Afterwards, wonderful food. Southern people make wonderful desserts. And I kind of looked around and I just saw all this terrible food that everybody was eating. Wonderful, wonderful tasting, but just horrible. They even had a pineapple casserole, which I probably ate half of. It was like pineapple baked, and then it was like crust on top of it and cheddar cheese. Oh my God. But I just looked around the room and I saw these people stuffing all this horrible food in their mouths. So I came home and really did a lot of research. You should do your own. Did a lot of research. And so I really landed on this keto diet, and I talked about it for a little bit. But I wanted to stay away from this until I kind of got into it to see what it was really about, what it did for me. And I can tell you, it seems to be really, really healthy. I lost about 14 pounds in a month, and all around my midsection, which is where, once we get to our certain age, that's where we start storing it. And I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to anybody, actually. So that's where I've been. Now, we have talked about some, so if do some research, do some homework, look into that keto diet. And I think the greatest thing about it is it's eat more, eat better food, better fats, better proteins, better vegetables, better fruits, and also and exercise less. For years I was trapped on that treadmill of eating that hamster wheel of eating whatever I wanted and then burning it off the gym. Well, it turns out spending an hour on a treadmill every day is not very good for you. It's not good for your joints. It's not good for your heart. It can't be good for your head in the long term. I mean, look at me, right? So the other thing is so last time I talked about why I was bit right here by an angry horse. No provocation on my part. And then again, and as a child who was nearly torn to pieces by a chimpanzee at the Clearfield County Fair. And then finally, the last one, of course, was I got bit right in the stomach by a giant German Shepherd that was trained specifically to attack me, probably by my grandmother. I'm convinced to this day that my grandmother took pictures of me to the dog, beat the dog savagely, and showed the dog pictures of me and said, if you ever see this little prick in your backyard, please eat him for dinner. Again, all of my injuries have one thing in common, and that's my horrible Irish grandmother, who prodded me right into the lion's den. Right into the mouth of the beast. Thanks, Grandma. I'm happy now. And of course, her saying was, good for you. You won't be happy until. And, I have to tell this side story really quick. So the Williamses lived right next beside us, and they had a sweet, sweet boy named John Williams. And John would disappear for great lengths of time, and he would come back. And John was probably 17 or 18 when we were like 8, 9, and 10 in that area. And what we loved about John is John had a child's imagination, and John thought that he had a car, and John didn't have a car. And those long periods of times where he disappeared, he was in a home for mentally unfit people, and he was one of the kindest people I ever met. But anyway, so when John was home, we were all excited because John would talk to us about cars and then say, hey, you guys want to go for a ride? And we'd say, sure. And then sure enough, we would jump in an imaginary car with John, who would be steering. And, it was ahead of the curve. We had to put our seatbelts on, and we would kind of run along with him while he made car noise and shifted gears and, all that stuff, turn signal. He did all that stuff. And my grandmother saying to me, and I'm an 8 or 9-year-old boy, right? My grandmother said, you guys aren't going to be happy till that retard screws one of you, are you? And I was like, what is that? I was like, that's when I'll be happy. Yes, sir. Exactly. I'm being buggered by a 17, 18-year-old escapee from one of our local mental institutions. Happy as shit, Grandma. Thanks for looking out for me. But we loved him. But the Williamses lived right across the street from us, and they always had a car torn apart in their driveway. It always had an engine hanging in the air off of, one of those things that, takes engines out of cars. And they had one child my age, Kenny, who was as big as a grown man when we were 10. He was big. He had a head like the size of a Rottweiler's, right? So, he was like probably 6'1", 200 pounds when we were like 10 or 11. And we were all terrified of him because he was retarded. That's what that was called back then. I don't know what they're calling it this week, but back then he was retarded. And I think the word retarded means is slow to, regressed progression, or something, or behind or whatever. I don't think it was meant as a pejorative. But anyway, at that time he was called retarded, and he was twice our size. So we were always kind of afraid if we ever saw him get upset or angry, because we knew that there was also another medical term which was called retard strong. And if you look that up in the Urban Dictionary, under retard strong, you will see Kenny's picture. Kenny could lift a car up, when he was, to let somebody slide under it. And then he had a, he was just an enormous person. We were terrified of him. He was a special ed kid. But everybody said he was retarded. But when a car went down the street and he said, "Yeah, that's a '57 Bel Air with 357 engine and a dual carburetor in it," you go, "Well, that doesn't sound like a retard to me." He knows more about cars than anybody in the world, and he did. But anyway, they had a German Shepherd in the backyard, and it was tethered to a stake in the ground. So he had worn a perfect dirt track in the backyard, like I'm sure it's the Williamses that look like the Indy 500. And this big dumb dopey like German Shepherd just kind of sat there, and he'd run around in a circle, and he wore that perfect path. And so one day my grandmother's babysitting us, and I'm behind the refrigerator door like this, drinking Kool-Aid out of a pitcher. And she yells at me, "You better not be drinking out of that pitcher." Now, I'm absolutely terrified because I believe she can see to the refrigerator door. I absolutely believe that. And so I'm like, "No." And of course, I got a big red, Kool-Aid mustache because we were raised on Kool-Aid, sugar, and government cheese. So anyway, she says to me out of the clear blue, "Don't let me see you up there by the Williams' dog," which is code for, "Hey, go see if that dog can really fuck you up today, boy." So I'm like, "Williams' dog, right?" So and she goes, "Yeah, that dog's a killer. You better stay away from that dog." So that dog ain't gonna do shit to me. I'm the fastest kid in Hillsdale. That dog's not gonna touch me. So I go up there, right? And of course, there's a circle, so I'm not stupid, right? I'm not going to get inside the circle. Take a rock, throw a rock, and I almost hit the dog. The dog's like, "Hey, kid, it's hot. I'm aggravated. I got this really long tongue. I got to deal with that." Can you see I'm like, breathing really heavy. I'm panting here. Just don't fuck with me, please. Please, exactly. Pirates are 3 games out of first place. This could be our year. Just fucking leave me alone. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's not any fun." So I throw another rock at him, and I get his attention, and he walks up to check me out, right? I'm not stupid enough to get inside that circle, but I know that I can hit him right here with a rock and be gone before he can blink. So I go like this, and as I pull back, he lunges and grabs me right here. And I didn't realize there was an extra 2 or 3 feet on that leash beyond, the golden circle. So anyway, so he grabs me, and he just pulls me, drags me inside the circle, and just chews me up. just like bit me in the bum, bit me in the stomach, bit me in the arm, and I'm just like crawling, and every time I get right to the dirt path, he just kind of drags me back in and just continues to fuck me up. I think he even got a drink once. He was like, "Look, kid, I told you this wasn't going to work out for you," and then he just fucked me up some more, right? So I finally get out of there. And I go home, and I don't tell anybody because, what you get in our home, after being assaulted by an animal, that's usually followed by a beating from a human being. So I didn't say anything. Now, that was time to go back to school time, and I hadn't gotten a vaccination yet, so I had to go get a vaccination. And my mother took me to the doctors, and of course, again, I had this extra large head. So they had the little striped t-shirts that kids wore. And mine was always, a battle, to get over this head, something that took 2 or 3 of my brothers to help me, and again, it was a difficult birth, and that's probably led to a lot of the angst between me and my mother. Anyway, Dr. Phil. So we go to the doctors, me and my mother, and Dr. Boyke, old Russian doctor, who adored my mother, and took care of us for years, probably most often free. He's like, you must take off shirt. And I'm like, no, take off my shirt. You must take off shirt. And I'm like, no. My mother's like, take your shirt off. And I'm like, no, Mom, I'm not. She's like, when did you get a Russian accent? Which I had for a weird time, for like a week at a time once I went to see Dr. Boyke. And then he's a Russian Jew, right? So like, no, so he's like, you must take off shirt. So now him and my mother, and we're rolling around. And then the shirt comes off, and then I've got this big yellow infected bite on my stomach. And my mother just screams, "That's the fucking Williams's dog. I told you to stay away from that fucking dog." And of course, like my grandmother, she asked me if I was happy. Of course I'm happy. I just got done wrestling my mother and my Russian Jew doctor for 15 minutes in the office and tore the whole place up, and I finally got this shirt off my head. So yeah. So I was double trouble that day. I got a tetanus shot and I got my vaccine. So 2 scars that day, right? Vaccine here and big old scar from the dog is on my belly. Okay. All right. Well, listen. Hey, pay attention to your diet. And one thing I've heard people say recently, and this is kind of crazy to me, is like, I don't want to lose weight because, it's going to make my face, it's going to show more wrinkles in my face and stuff like that. And that's like people will say, they don't want to stop smoking because they're afraid of gaining weight. Oh, stop it. Stop it. That's crazy talk, right? You want to, crazy, right? Anyway, that's my generation. B-60. Peace.